It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. It's Wednesday. Wednesdays are great. I love Wednesdays. Indiana playing tonight against Northwestern. And, last night, as I was sitting on my couch watching Purdue blow a lead, I was thinking about Mike Woodson and this Indiana Hoosiers basketball program and their inability to win big games. And this then leads me through the rabbit hole of, Mike Woodson really likes to say over the hump. He's got to get his teams over the hump. So from here on out, until Mike Woodson gets his teams over the hump, which we're going to have to define that at some point, but we'll do that later. From here on out, Wednesdays on the real Jonathan Smith Show will be known as Get Over the Hump Day.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo! Hump day!
Hump Day. Mike Woodson trying to get over the hump tonight when they take on Northwestern. It's a big one. He hadn't beaten them yet.
As the coach, I gotta get us over that hump. I gotta get them comfortable, knowing that you're gonna be in close games and you gotta make plays coming down the home stretch. I mean, in the tournament, we were right there. I just didn't get them over the hump, man. And that's something that I live with every day of my life. Because I truly believe that was the team to really make some noise and get to the finals, and I just couldn't get them over the hump.
Couldn't get him over the hump. That has been the story of Mike Woodson's time here at the University of Indiana, or Indiana University, however you say it. That has been the story of his time at IU. Okay, just the inability to win big games, the inability to win close games. It has been a struggle for him, unless that close game has come against Ohio State, then he just kind of finds a way to win those games. But every single segment today, here on Hump Day, Over the Hump Day, Wednesday, is going to be about getting something or someone or some team over the hump. And tonight, Mike Woodson is trying to get the Indiana Hoosiers over the Northwestern-sized hump. It's not a big hump. Some humps are larger than others, like Mount Everest, much larger hump than, the hill in your neighborhood that you don't like to walk up. That's probably a bad reference because there are no hills in central Indiana. But tonight, Mike Woodson has an opportunity to beat Northwestern for the first time in his tenure at Indiana. He's 0-4 against Northwestern. 0-4 against Northwestern. Unacceptable. You can't do that. Like, I don't think Mike Woodson's a bad coach. I don't. He does things that good coaches do. For example, he's 14-5 this year. It's a pretty good start to the season. That's a really good start to the season, if we're being honest. He brought in a bunch of talent. Number 1 ranked transfer portal class, Bryson Tucker, highly ranked recruit coming out of high school. I think good coaches tend to start 14-5 and bring in talent. The holdup, though, with Mike Woodson and why people are frustrated, I think this season in particular, and really throughout his entire tenure, is because of the teams that he loses to. He's lost to Northwestern 4 times. He struggles to beat Nebraska. He's lost to Nebraska. He lost to Nebraska 3 times in the calendar year of 2024. It's unacceptable. You can't do that as the head coach at Indiana. You can't lose to Iowa by 25 or however much they ended up losing by. You can't do that at Indiana because reputation and these things matter. If Indiana and Mike Woodson were losing to Michigan State or some of the other traditional powers of the Big Ten, I don't think Mike Woodson's seat would be as hot as it is, even though he's 14-5. Why his seat is hot at all, I really don't know. when you lose to Nebraska, Northwestern, and by 20 plus to Iowa, your seat's going to heat up way faster than if you're losing to Michigan State or Wisconsin or even Michigan. People wouldn't be so quick to call for Mike Woodson's jobs if those were the games that he was losing. Reputation is so important. Nebraska is known as a not great basketball school. Creighton is supposed to be the basketball school in the state of Nebraska, not the Cornhuskers. And because that is their reputation, it doesn't matter that they employ Fred Hoiberg, one of the best coaches in all of college hoops. Since they're Nebraska and their reputation is historically worse than Indiana, Indiana fans think that they should never lose to them. And there's some validity to that statement. Northwestern has had dynamic guard play, in the entire 4 years that Mike Woodson has been the head coach at Indiana. Boo Buie playing for the Knicks right now. Right, he's the most recent guy as of late to come out of there, an absolute stud who could tilt games all on his own. That doesn't matter, though, because they're Northwestern. And in the mind of Indiana fans, they should never lose to Northwestern. So the fact that Northwestern is the only team in the Big Ten that Mike Woodson has not beat yet in 4 years is problematic. Indiana should never lose to them. And Mike Woodson can't get his teams, for some reason, over this Northwestern-sized hump. And for his sake, he needs to do that tonight. All these games have been close. That's the other frustrating part of this. Close games doesn't really seem like Indiana tends to pull those out. And that has to change. They've lost by an average of 3 3/4 points in their 4 losses against Northwestern. The 4 losses have been by a combined total of 15 points. It's a small hump. This is a hump Indiana should be able to get over this year. For some reason, they're a 5.5-point underdog. Once again, let me remind you, this Indiana team is incredibly talented. They should go on the road and beat Northwestern. Okay, I'm betting them tonight. They look a lot better. Luke Goody, hopefully, is going to keep playing well, because if he doesn't, he will catch hell when he gets on Twitter tonight. Okay? Maybe, hopefully, this is the time Mike Woodson finally gets his team over this Northwestern hump. Another question for you. When is Malik Renew coming back? I've been reading up on it, trying to figure out a date. Been texting some people. Hey, when is this guy ever going to come back? Okay, sure, he's been practicing, but he's been out for 2 weeks now. When the injury happened, Mike Woodson made it sound like it was no big deal at all. Like, he hurt his knee. He'll be fine. He'll be back. It's like, all right, man, like it's been 2 weeks. Let's go. Let's ramp up the practice a bit. Indiana needs their leading scorer back. Okay, but in those 2 weeks, they've been 4-2. So maybe don't rush him back. I don't know. I just think that he would help, because anytime you can add a guy to your roster who can go and get a bucket, it'd be nice. You need it. Okay? And then, of course, Bryson Tucker. Look, I like Bryson Tucker. This is a pro-Bryson Tucker show. He missed the game against Ohio State because he dislocated his pinky. Bro, that is incredibly soft. He dislocated his right pinky, so he didn't play in the game Friday night. One of my really good friends, his name's Matt Murphy, been on the show before. We play pickup basketball every Saturday. Take me back 2 weeks, or let me take you back 2 weeks. We're playing. My buddy Matt has an issue with his right pinky. And he sticks his hand out in a passing lane. Ball jams his right pinky. And it was disgusting. I about threw up. Because his pinky was just dangling from his hand. He had no control over it. Just disgusting. Okay? To think that there was a time in my college life where I was like, maybe I'll be a doctor. Yeah, absolutely not. And he was like, all right, it's all right, guys. And he turns around. You see him yank his pinky, pops it back into place, grabs the ball, takes 4 or 5 shots. He's like, all right, guys, I'm good. Okay, come on, Bryson. Let's go. It's a pinky. You should be able to play through that. Suck it up and play. Like, I want to be pro Bryson Tucker. Love the way he plays. Love the way he moves without the ball. I love the way he shoots it. But a dislocated pinky is going to keep you out of the game? Come on, man. We have to be tougher than that. Speaking of tough loss for Purdue last night. And it's really, and I'll be honest, it was really frustrating watching that game. It was. I'm on my couch. First off, I don't get frustrated very often, but my Peacock would not work. I was like refreshing, and so I missed the entire first half of the Purdue game. And I watched the second half, and I'm just watching Purdue not crumble because they fought back. But I was so nice to Purdue yesterday. I called them the best team in the Big Ten. I still feel that way. And then they lose at home to Ohio State, a team that's now, 11-8 on the year? They lost at home to Ohio State. I was just like, of course, that's the way that this goes. But once again, I still think that Purdue's the best team in the Big Ten. If you caught the Dan Dockett show yesterday, we were talking about, upsets and how these things happen and how they don't happen in football as often as they do in basketball, because football is an incredibly physical sport, whereas basketball, it's like one guy gets hot and you're toast. And that is exactly what happened last night to Purdue. This Micah Parsons kid, he went crazy. 8 of 10 from the floor, 6 of 8 from 3. I mean, hitting like crazy step backs, and some of them were contested pretty well, I thought. Didn't matter. He just wasn't going to miss the rest of the night. It felt like he didn't miss a shot in the second half. Ohio State, as a team, shot the ball incredibly well, too. 11 of 23 from downtown. That's 48%. Some of the shots they hit, once again, were ridiculous. But this happens sometimes in basketball. And it's why March Madness is as crazy as it is. Some nights, players like Micah Parsons last night got hot. And he was 8 of 10 from the floor, and it didn't really matter what Purdue did. That guy was going to put the ball in the bucket. And then on the flip side of things, sometimes good teams go cold. That's what happened to Purdue last night. Braden Smith was ice cold. 3 of 14 from the field. That's abysmal. As a team, they were 3 of 9 from 3. This is something that we see once again against Washington. They had a real tough time getting threes up, which is problematic because when you look at the strengths of this Purdue basketball team, it's their ability to shoot the ball. And they only got 9 of them up. That's an issue. Fletcher Lawyer made 0 threes. Ohio State did a great job of running Purdue off the three-point line. The only reason why Purdue had a chance to win that game is because Trey Kaufman-Wren had a day. 26 points, only missed 5 shots, 11 of 16 from the floor. The issue is the perimeter shooting that is usually there for Purdue was not there last night. And it undoubtedly was for Ohio State. If you're a Purdue fan, I wouldn't be worried after this loss. Wouldn't be concerned in the slightest. Okay, Ohio State got red hot. You went ice cold. If, Purdue had shot halfway decently, you probably would have won the game. And so I'm not worried. I wouldn't forget about it if I'm a Purdue fan. I still think they're the best team in the Big Ten. Braden Smith's still the best player in the Big Ten. I know he had one game where he didn't play very well. Happens sometimes. Players have off nights. 3 of 14 from the floor. It happens. Okay? That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So they'll be fine. They'll bounce back. Coming up on Saturday, because that should be their next game. I have no idea who they play, but I'll probably bet them to win because Purdue's a really good basketball team. And yeah, so they're going to be fine. Tonight, though, Northwestern and IU are going to play. Hopefully, Malik Renew returns soon. They still really need him. I know they're 4-2 without him, but just having a guy that you can give the ball to and say, hey, man, go score, just makes things so much easier. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Mike Woodson's favorite day of the week, Over the Hump Wednesday, continues. And we're going to talk about Anthony Richardson because I think Colts fans, they're way too excited about Anthony Richardson working out with Chris Hess. Okay, this is the biggest grasping. What's the term? This is ridiculous. We should not be this excited about this. We know who Anthony Richardson is. And there is one major flaw with Anthony Richardson that will prevent him from getting better this offseason. He can work with Jesus Christ himself on how to throw the football better. But until he fixes this very one specific thing, he will not improve as a football player. I'm going to tell you what that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
It's Over the Hump Day here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show in honor of Mike Woodson and his relentless pursuit of getting the Indiana Hoosiers over the hump. He'll try to do that tonight, try and pick up his first win over Northwestern during his time here at Indiana. Coming up at 11 o'clock, Shehan Jayarajuh of CBS Sports. He is set to join the show to put a bow on the college football season. And Anthony Richardson currently is in the process of setting Indianapolis Colts fans up for disappointment. Colts fans, if you are excited about Anthony Richardson working out with Chris Hess, don't be. You're just going to get your hopes up just to be disappointed. Chris Hess might be a miracle worker. He helped Josh Allen go from a 53% completion percentage his rookie year to 59% his second year to 69%, nice, his third year. That's his career high. 69% completion percentage for Josh Allen. That's his career high. From that point, he has been somewhere between 63% to 67% in terms of his completion percentage. That's impressive. That's where you need to be as a starting quarterback in the NFL, especially if you're a guy like Josh Allen, who's going to push the ball down the field quite a bit more than some of these other quarterbacks that we see. And for reference as well, because I find this to be important, Josh Allen's completion percentage in college was worse than Anthony Richardson's in college as well. And Josh Allen played at Wyoming against, not SEC level defenses. So the accuracy has been completely and totally improved by leaps and bounds from the time he was in college to, his third year in the NFL and on. And that's because of this Chris Hess guy who has helped Josh Allen come a long way. And as soon as it was announced that this is who Anthony Richardson would be working out with this offseason, this guy who really helped Josh Allen improve in his short to intermediate accuracy, everyone's just excited. Oh my gosh, Anthony Richardson, he's the next Josh Allen. He's going to become so much better. Oh my gosh, this is going to be great. I can't wait. Colts, Super Bowl next year, baby. Let's go. Calm down. I have one question about Chris Hess that I think will directly impact whether or not he can help Anthony Richardson get better. Really, two questions. Does he have children? And does he have any experience working in a daycare or babysitting? Because the one thing that we know about Anthony Richardson is that he is a proven immature child. And he has to get over that hump if he wants to get better. The backwards hat to open the season, tapping out in the middle of a game, and all of the stories that came out about him not going in early and not doing all of the things that mature NFL quarterbacks should do, all of those things point with like big, bold arrows that he is immature. And I don't care what trainer he works with. It does not matter unless he grows up. You can have the best coach in the world, but it doesn't matter if you don't know how to work. I guarantee you that Nick Saban, best college football coach ever, I guarantee you he had players show up at Alabama and not get better, despite being coached by Nick Saban, because they just didn't know how to work. They were too immature to get better. And I'm just not convinced that Anthony Richardson has reached a point where he's mature. Sure, he got a little bit better this year, but I don't think it was from working hard. It's just from gaining experience. Like, if you do something enough, eventually you're going to get better at it. You may not become good at it, but you'll become better at it. And for Anthony Richardson, he physically didn't get any better from his rookie year to his second year. And that's concerning. Oh, but Jonathan, he was hurt. He was rehabbing in the offseason. That's great. He wasn't ready for training camp. He didn't get better then. There were still concerns about him reading defenses and identifying blitzes, and he had to go in early in the middle of the season to learn how to audible the offensive line, to set protection. He needed extra help on that. Like, why didn't that happen in the offseason? You can learn that while you're rehabbing your shoulder. This guy doesn't seem to know how to work. In the short amount of time that he's been here, he hasn't proven that he's capable of putting in that work on his own. And in the offseason, you are on your own. There are 53 players that dress out for the Colts every Sunday. That doesn't include practice squad guys. Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard cannot hold his hand all offseason like they did during the regular season. They aren't going to see him every single day and say, hey, Anthony, step in this room really quickly. Hey, man, we don't feel like you're preparing well enough. We're going to bench you for 2 weeks. That is not an option in the offseason. Shane Steichen's got to worry about Anthony Richardson. He's got to worry about this upcoming draft, who they're going to take. I'm sure that they're going to look at tape on free agents and figure out who they want to go sign, or at least who they want to ask for Chris Ballard to go sign. We'll see if he actually does it or not. But they have a lot of things on their plate that they have to deal with in the offseason. They can't hold his hand when he's in probably Florida working out with this Chris Hess guy. It is directly on Anthony Richardson's shoulders as to whether or not he's going to get better. Okay? It is directly on him. There is no one around to hold his hand and walk him through this. No one is there to hold him accountable every single day. He is on his own. I will never forget the summer after my freshman year of college. I went to Dallas to play summer baseball. And I worked really hard that summer, busted my butt. I lifted 6 days a week, in the cage, played in a lot of games, played against some guys that got drafted. It was great. And I came back from that summer better than a lot of my teammates, older ones, guys the same age as me, whatever. And the difference was, like, I knew how to actually work and how to hold myself accountable and to be disciplined and not to be like, I'm tired, I'll work out tomorrow. Like, that wasn't a thing. And Anthony Richardson has to find that this offseason. He has to find that discipline inside himself to get up every day and go get better. I really hope that Kobe Bryant is one of his role models, because that was Kobe Bryant's whole thing. Even though when you hear the Kobe Bryant schedule, I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I don't. I wake up at 4 a.m., first workout at 6, go home, take a nap, next workout at 9, work out for 2 hours, come home, eat lunch, take another nap, work out again at 3, go home, take a nap, go back out again at 5, go home, eat dinner, go back out again, work out at 8 o'clock, go home, hang out with the family, go to bed at 9. Yeah, no way, bro. I'm sorry. Absolutely not. But you get the point. Anthony Richardson needs something like that. He's got to find that obsessive thing inside of him that is obsessive about football. Because I have to be honest, I'm not convinced that he is completely and totally obsessed about football. And look, football doesn't have to be your only interest, but it has to be your most important one. Especially when you're like Anthony Richardson and you're clearly behind the 8 ball in terms of the development process that he was supposed to be going through. He is way behind the 8 ball. His accuracy, his completion percentage got worse from last year to this year. Seriously. Like, he can't be rapping on the side. Like, if he films another rap video, I'm going to go crazy. Seriously. You can't be doing stuff like that. Okay, I'm just not convinced that he's fully focused on football. And if he's not, he can work out with Chris Hess or Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Jesus Christ, doesn't matter. He can work out with any of those people. But if he's not fully focused on it, then he's not going to get any better. Okay? Anthony Richardson, he's in a boat, and he's rowing it. He's in a little rowboat, and he's rowing it from Florida to Europe. And before he left, he looked at me and he said, Jonathan, I'm going to row this thing all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. And I said, buddy, I'll believe it when I see it. And he goes, I'm going to do it because I'm going to have some help. My good friend Chris Ballard He's going to help me row the boat. I'm like, oh, okay. Chris Ballard and Anthony Richardson, they're in the same boat, telling us how they're going to get better and how they're going to fix things. I'm not going to believe either one of them until I see it. Seriously. Like, they have to show me. Okay, and he's going to have opportunities. And, those preseason weeks, those videos that we're going to get when OTAs and everything starts, and, they're doing, offense on air, and Michael Pittman Jr. runs like a 5-yard in, and Anthony Richardson throws it perfectly. Oh, that tweet might go viral. It might. Colts fans are going to go crazy when we see that. Okay, he's going to have opportunities to show us, obviously, throughout the season, whether or not he got better every time he completes a short pass. Oh, my gosh. The people around here are going to, go crazy. Okay, which isn't a bad thing. I'm glad that there's excitement. But when it comes to the Colts, I am the state of Missouri. Okay? Not misery, Missouri. It's known as the show me state. When it comes to the Colts, they're going to have to show me, or else I will not believe them. That's where they're at. I have zero trust, zero faith in anyone in that building to do anything correctly. Zero trust, zero faith in anyone in that building to help Anthony Richardson get better. This franchise has a long way to go. They've lost the trust of, at least me. I don't know if they've lost your trust or not, but yeah, I've got no faith in this team whatsoever. Okay? Does the Lou and Arumo hiring make me feel better? It does a little bit, because I do think he's a good defensive coordinator. He's got some stuff on his resume that makes me say, okay, if we give this guy some good players, he can put a good defense out there. But aside from that, what has Shane Steichen done? Got 8-9 this last year, 9-8 with Gardner Minshew. That's great. DeMeco Ryans in his first 2 years with the Houston Texans. What's he done? Oh, that's right. He won the division twice. Won a playoff game twice. Chris Ballard, he said it himself during the press conference. He said he's done a bad job the last 4 years. He hasn't done his job the last 4 years. That's a long time. 4 years ago, where was I? I had just moved here. I've been here I don't know about a long time. I've been here a nice while, though. Okay? And, why in the world would I trust this regime when they haven't done anything positive in 5 years? So we'll see. Sorry, Anthony Richardson. You can tell us you're working out with whoever, but I just kind of refuse to believe that you're going to get any better. Speaking of getting better, the Indiana Pacers, they're rolling. They have been the second best team in the NBA during the month of January. They're third in defensive rating. What? The Indiana Pacers are playing defense? They are. And hopefully the defense travels, because they're in Paris right now. I'm really jealous. Good friend of the station, Eddie White, he posted a photo on Twitter. It's him and TJ McConnell in front of the Eiffel Tower. And I mean, it's incredible. Seriously, I'm jealous. Never been, really want to go. That's where the Pacers are at. They're getting ready to basically play a road game, because they're playing the Spurs, who have, the Frenchman himself, Victor Wembanyama. And I got to be honest, I hate this. I hate that the Pacers are playing in Europe. I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You look amazing. What have you been doing?
You've heard of Ozempic, Wegovy, and the other GLP-1 medications, right? Well, I found this great company called Zelfie. If you qualify, their providers can prescribe medications like Ozempic and Wegovy and other GLP-1 medications that are 80 to 90% less expensive, all 100% online.
I can get GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% less and do it all online? No doctor's office or pharmacy?
Yes, Zelfie can help provide you with semaglutide or tirzepatide, the active ingredients in Ozempic and other expensive GLP-1s, but for 80 to 90% less.
How do I get started with Zelfie?
Just send them a text.
Text METHOD to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie to see if you're eligible. Get the same active ingredients in Wegovy or Ozempic, but for 80 to 90% less and 100% online. Don't wait. Text METHOD to 200-300 right now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text METHOD to 200-300. METHOD to 200-300.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith. If you want to watch the show there, you can also watch over on YouTube, over at Indy's Sports Ticket, where you can weigh in on the conversation. Comment in the YouTube chat just to give me your thoughts. I think there's a way to do it on Twitter as well. I'm just not smart enough to figure that out. Coming up here in about 20 minutes, Shehan Jayarajuh of CBS Sports covers college football for them. He's going to join just to put a bow on the college football season. We'll obviously talk a little bit more Ohio State and Notre Dame. We'll talk a little bit about next year. I know he's got an article out talking about who should be ranked number one and all that, like way too early stuff. So he's going to come up. He's joining here in about 20 minutes, and we'll talk a little more college football. The Pacers, they're in Paris. They play tomorrow. And I, like, you know, as I alluded to before the break, I'm jealous, like, would love to be in Paris to watch these games. It's cool. I get it. You know, league expansion and interest overseas and all these things are important. But with that being said, like, basketball is very much an international sport. Why are we doing this? I legitimately do not like this. So I've got a sports bucket list. I've just got a list of things in sports that I want to do, I want to experience before I die. Okay? The one that I've been working on more of here as of late, my older brother and I, we want to go watch the Arkansas Razorbacks, who suck, and they play Notre Dame next year in football, and they're going to get crushed. And that might be my least favorite day in radio ever when that happens, but that's beside the point. My older brother and I, our goal is to watch Arkansas play football in every SEC stadium. We're already talking about going down to Austin next year, and he knows some people that play at the University of Tennessee, and so he may be able to get us in there. And so, you know, we're making plans to accomplish this. One of the other things on my list, though, that, you know, just popped up last year is I have to go see Victor Wembanyama play in person at some point in my life. And I was like, I'm going to go watch him play this year because the tickets last year were very expensive. And like, it makes sense. You know, Victor Wembanyama is known as the best prospect in basketball we've seen since LeBron James. And I was going to go watch him play this year. And then the schedule comes out. And they're playing the Pacers are playing the Spurs twice in Paris. Expanding the game, doing all of those things are great. But, like, do we really have to play 2 games in Paris? We couldn't have played 1? Like, seriously. Like this is very much a road game for the Pacers. It's very much going to be a home game for the Spurs because, Victor Wembanyama's, the most popular French basketball player in the world. People are going to pour into that arena to cheer for him and the Spurs. These are two road games that the Pacers are playing. Like, why couldn't we have done a 4-team thing? Okay, why couldn't we have sent, the Pacers, the Spurs, the Lakers, and the Warriors? Because, the NBA, they're going to show you Lakers, Warriors whenever they have the chance to. Like, why couldn't we have done that? Instead, it's 2 games, Pacers, Spurs, twice. Okay, Victor Wembanyama is one of the biggest attractions in the NBA. Once again, best prospect we've seen since LeBron James. And I hate that Indiana and Indianapolis, I hate that we're getting robbed of getting to see him play in person this year because I don't know how much NBA stuff you watch. I watch it all the time. And, I love watching the Spurs because Wemby is just an absolute phenom. And I hate that we're getting robbed of getting to watch him play in person. But the Pacers are going to have an excellent opportunity to win that game because the Pacers are absolutely rolling right now. Absolutely rolling. The Pacers have done what the Indiana Hoosiers have been trying to do for the last 4 years. It's over the hump day Wednesday in honor of Mike Woodson and his never, his just constant pursuit of getting Indiana over the hump. He's been trying to do it for the last 4 years. And the Pacers have gotten over the hump the first hump of their NBA season. Okay, it's a long season. There's undoubtedly another hump that's coming. Okay, the NBA season is a 2-hump camel, not a 1-hump camel. Okay, the Pacers have successfully navigated this first hump of Ben Shepherd and Aaron Nesmith and of those guys, getting hurt and Tyrese Halliburton really struggling. They've navigated through that. They're back over 500. Now they're healthy and they're playing as well as anyone in the NBA. Absolutely rolling. They have the best record in the month of January in the NBA at 8-1. They're 4th in offensive rating, 3rd in defensive rating for the month. They have been the 3rd best defensive team in the month of January. That's absurd for the Indiana Pacers, a team that was at their best 18th at one point in defensive rating last year. They have really turned a corner in that area. And this combination of outstanding offense and defense has given them the 2nd best net rating in the NBA this month, only behind the best team in the NBA, that is the Oklahoma City Thunder. The fact that they're playing defense at this elite of a level is insane to me. I legitimately cannot believe it. Okay, they have come a long way from the start of last year because they got better defensively as the year progressed, but they were atrocious to start the season on defense last year. They improved, got up. I think they were 18th going into the playoffs amongst the league in terms of defense. And now playing some of the best defense in the league. They are an elite defensive team as of right now, and they have been over the last 15 games. Okay, it's not even just the month of January. Over the last month, they have been the 5th best defensive team in the NBA, which is big for them because no one questioned the offense. Pacers had the 2nd best offense in the NBA last year. I mean, scoring all the time, and it was impressive, right? The question was, can they play defense? Can they play defense? And the answer this month has been yes. So tip of the cap to those players for doing something that Anthony Richardson doesn't understand, working hard, and becoming better defenders over the offseason. These also, another reason to think that the Pacers are going to be even better going forward is they've put up these numbers without Aaron Nesmith, who's either their best or 2nd best defensive player. So there is room for them to still get better when they kind of slide him back into the rotation. very intrigued to see what they wind up doing in terms of how they split up those minutes, because they've got 11 guys that can legitimately play, right? Like, and I don't mean just, playing the regular season. Like, they have 11 guys that if you put them on the floor in the playoffs, I'd be fine with it. I'd be like, oh, yeah, this guy can play. He'll be fine. He won't do anything dumb. He won't cost the Pacers a chance to win this game. Like, they've just got so many good players, which is a great problem to have. The NBA trade deadline is approaching. I'll have thoughts on that coming up here at some point. If we even get any movement, the new CBA makes it really tough for these teams to make trades. Now, in the last segment, I talked quite a bit about Anthony Richardson and his future and whether or not he is, going to improve. Everyone's freaking out about Chris Hess. Oh, Chris Hess, he's the guy. He's going to be the one to turn things around for Anthony Richardson. So I put up a poll. We're going to start trying to do a poll of the day here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. And the poll is pretty simple. Do you think Chris Hess will help Anthony Richardson improve enough for the Colts to make the playoffs this next season? And, the poll just got posted. We got 75% no, 25% yes. Head over there, __ Jonathan Smith, and vote. Let me know your thoughts on whether or not you trust Chris Hess to really develop, arguably the second most inaccurate quarterback we've ever had in NFL history, behind the one and only Tim Tebow, who is, his new commercial's hilarious, by the way. If you haven't seen it, also coming up throughout the week, or coming up on Sunday, we've got NFC and AFC championship games. We've got 3 games left in the NFL season. And, I listen to sports radio and stuff all the time. Probably a little bit too much. I should probably give myself a break, but no, I don't need a break. I'm not Anthony Richardson. We're disciplined. We're getting better at this every day. Anyway, and Chiefs fatigue has become a thing. People are so sick and tired of the Chiefs. I find it hilarious, and I don't understand it. I don't. I love things that are great. Like, I could eat a great steak, great mac and cheese, and great mashed potatoes for dinner every single night for the rest of my life. And it would be awesome. I would love that. It would be incredible. It'd be amazing. Because I enjoy great. I'll eat great food, even if it's the same food every single night. I went and played pickup yesterday, and the run was not great, so I left. Couldn't stand it. So frustrating. Anyway, I enjoy great. So I like watching the Chiefs. I hope they win on Sunday. Because why in the world wouldn't I want to see great? Like the run that they're on is only rivaled by what the Patriots did. And dynasties, I think, are awesome. I find them to be fascinating and cool. And the documentary that's going to come out in a decade about this Chiefs run is going to be great. And the more they win, the better that documentary gets. The more interested I become, the more people start to hate them. So yes, there is Chiefs fatigue from you. But I myself have none whatsoever. I hope they keep winning. I hope they keep making people upset. I hope that the Bills keep losing, even though I do like Josh Allen, because it just feeds into this and it just makes things so much better. And I cannot wait to watch that game. And the Bills are probably a better team than the Chiefs are. And sorry, I'm kind of neglecting the NFC because I'm just not convinced that the Commanders are going to be able to beat Philly. I know that they're tied 1-1 on the season, but the game that the Commanders won is the game that Jalen Hurts was concussed and he missed the whole game. And so I am just absolutely fascinated by what's going to happen in that game, what the discourse is going to be if the Chiefs win. They're favored by 1.5, as they should be, because they have Patrick Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback. Actually, no, not quite yet, arguably. So far, arguably the second best quarterback we've ever seen. For me, he's He's got a three-peat if we want to argue the Mahomes and Brady thing. Like I want more Andy Reid. I want more Mahomes. I want more Travis Kelce. I want more shots of Taylor Swift at all of the Chiefs games. Not really. But you get my point. Greatness is something in sports that we don't get very often. Like the Warriors teams in the late 2010s. Great teams. Give me more of them. Okay? Like the fact that LeBron James is still playing, I think is awesome because getting to sit back and watch someone be great for 20 years is amazing. It is. And we don't get runs like this in sports very often. We just don't. So with that being said, Shehan Jayarajuh, he is set to join me coming up here in about 8 minutes. We're going to put a bow on the college football season. We'll talk more Ohio State beating Notre Dame. We'll look ahead to next year as well. It's just I love college football. We're in the middle of this shift. This thing that's been all SEC all the time for the past 20 years. Now we've got back-to-back Big Ten champs. I would still argue that the SEC is the better conference, but I would lose that argument because the Big Ten has back-to-back national champs. I just think that the conference is deeper. Simple as that. So he's going to come on. We're going to talk about just kind of how the sport's changing. More stuff coming up on Indiana. It is Get Over the Hump Wednesday in honor of Mike Woodson and his never-ending pursuits of getting the Indiana Hoosiers over the hump. He's going to try and beat Northwestern tonight for the first time during his tenure at Indiana. And I can't wait to watch the game. I'm fascinated to see what Mike Woodson does differently because every game that they've played against Northwestern has been incredibly close. Right? They've lost by an average of basically 4 points every time that they've played. And there's no Boo Buie this year for Northwestern. Okay, so maybe things will be different, but I don't know. Indiana, they're 14-5. They're 14-5. And so I hope they keep winning because I just think it's funny. I think it's going to be funny to sit back and watch Indiana fans complain about Mike Woodson at 15-5, a 75% win percentage on the year, sitting in the upper echelon of the Big Ten to start the season. I just think it's going to be funny to watch people complain about him, even though he's won a lot of games to start this year. This is a good team. I have all the faith in the world that they're going to be able to go and win that game on the road tonight. And look, whether they win by 10, whether they win by 20, it doesn't really matter to me because winning on the road in the Big Ten is one of the hardest things to do in sports. Winning road conference games, no matter who you're playing, is incredibly tough. That's why it's wild that Ohio State beat Purdue last night. Insane to me. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, good friend of the program, Shehan Jayarajuh, is going to join, and we're going to put a bow on the college football season.
Ever had no hot
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. It is Get Over the Hump Wednesday in honor of Mike Woodson and his inability to get the Indiana Hoosiers over the hump. Joining me now, it's Shehan Jayarajuh to talk about Ohio State and Ryan Day getting over this huge hump of trying to win a national title. Shehan, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So this thing happens every single year, and I got to be honest, I do not like it, and I'm very curious your opinion on it. Why do we ask every single year if the most recent national champion is the best team ever at the conclusion of every single year?
I know, it's a little crazy, isn't it? It was, I think it was yesterday I saw a post going across the timeline that was like, is this the best running back duo in the history of college football? And it's like, listen, I was there for Reggie Bush and Lendell White. It wasn't really that close, to be quite honest. And this run, this 4-game run in the playoffs, I mean, it's unique. It's definitely unique. There's never been anything like this. I'd argue it's as impressive a 4-game stretch as any team has ever had, mostly because it's the most that's ever been asked of any individual team. But, like, this team lost 2 games in the regular season. They lost to a really mediocre Michigan team. They lost on the road against Oregon. Like, this is obviously not one of the best teams of all time when you talk about champions. Now, they are very deserving champions to me. Heading into the year, they were always the best roster in college football, and I think that they finally were able to put it together. And I do also think one other factor is that when you start to look forward, I think we're starting to see a little bit of a weakening of the, I guess, amount of talent that one roster can have. So this might be one of the more talented rosters we get for a little while heading forward. But when you look back at some of the teams that have come the past couple years, I mean, I don't think this team's better than 2023 Michigan necessarily. Like, that was a really great team too. But it's always funny whenever we have to kind of pull this around. And, not to get too existential about it, but I do think that people almost can't value something unless they think it's the greatest that ever happened.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That the running back question is interesting. Like, are they better than Darren McFadden and Felix Jones? I don't know. I would argue not. No bias there, though. Joined by Shehan Jayarajuh talking Ohio State, finally getting over the hump, winning a national title. Why was Notre Dame able to find offensive success and defensive success in that second half, but not in the first?
Well, I think that they diversified a little bit. I mean, obviously, you saw the emergence of Jaden Greathouse, the fantastic wide receiver. It's funny. I've actually been watching him since he was a sophomore at Austin Westlake. He was teammates with Cade Klubnik, who plays for Clemson now. And so, like, I was waiting for this moment for him to kind of break out. And I think that when they proved that they were willing to go down the field just a little bit, it changed the game and it gave them an opportunity. And look, I mean, you saw in that first half, I mean, they really had nothing consistent going except for the quarterback run game. And that first drive by Riley Leonard will go down, like, in college football playoff history as one of the, like, most Herculean individual efforts that we've seen. But I think that in that second half, you start to see them be a bit more aggressive in the passing game. You start to see them give Riley Leonard some makeable passes, and you see the emergence of Greathouse. So I think that for them, like, I understand, and I think it was probably the right decision to try to hold on to the ball and slow the game down in the first half. And they gave themselves a chance for a lot of the game by doing that. But I do think that there's more upside here. And also, by the way, when I look forward to 2025, I think that there is untapped potential on this offense waiting to be used.
My question would just be about the receivers. You mentioned Greathouse, who had a really good run during the college football playoff, but I felt like against Penn State and even Georgia, not as much against Ohio State, but I don't think that their corners are as good as the ones for Penn State and Georgia. I felt like the receivers struggled to create separation in the passing game. So my holdup for Notre Dame next year would be how good are the receivers going to be?
No, I think it's a fair question. Now, I do think that when you look at the limited amount that we've seen Steve Angeli, like, he is somebody who gets the ball out really efficiently. I actually thought Thinking back to that Penn State game when Riley Leonard was knocked out for a little bit, like Anthony came in and just made quick decisions, quick passes, got the ball out. And I think that's a really underrated aspect of just quarterbacking at the college level, is just making quick decisions with the ball. And you saw them have some success. Now, look, when you look at the receiving core, Jaden Greathouse, I think he's a star. I think he's going to be a true number one receiver next year if he's given that opportunity. Jordan Faison, I think, is a good underneath player. And, obviously you expect that they're going to have, some production from the tight end position as well. But I do think that some of this also will come down to, can Mike Denbrock take the player like Steve Angeli or CJ Carr, whoever starts at that quarterback position, and make the game easy for them? Like you said, outside of Greathouse, they probably don't have a guy who's going to win one-on-one matchups to get open with consistency. You've seen Jordan Faison do that for stretches, but not consistently. So I think that they've got to find ways to scheme these guys open. But I think that there is enough talent on the roster to make that happen. And also, look, wide receiver right now, the transfer portal is probably the most high premium position because everybody is looking for receivers right now. But if you can add maybe one more piece, especially maybe somebody who's a bit of a bigger body to go next to Greathouse, I think that that's maybe where you're able to find some success and bring things along.
Joined by Shehan Jayarajuh of CBS Sports, putting a bow on the college football season. You mentioned their need for a receiver and how everyone seems to be looking for them. They should probably just call Ohio State and try to poach because it seems like they have all of the good ones. How tough is it, though, for Notre Dame to grab these receivers out of the portal, given that they're not, just like a normal SEC or Big Ten school where if you have a 2-point, you can show up and play?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is absolutely a factor, right? Like, I don't think that you're going to be able to, like, it impacts their recruiting just a little bit. It impacts the transfers a little bit. Now, I do think that that there are guys out there, that there are players out there that you can look to. I mean, and also, like, nobody knows how to create and identify and find these guys better than Notre Dame, just because obviously even when you're recruiting guys out of high school, that's kind of where you figure things out. So I think that this is something that's going to improve over time as Marcus Freeman and his staff have these long-term relationships with guys, even when they don't pick Notre Dame. And look, I mean, I think that the nation fell in love with Marcus Freeman during this run. I expect that he's going to be a hot commodity in terms of, I think players are going to really want to play for them. And I think that this is kind of only the beginning from a recruiting perspective for this team.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you said, everyone loves Marcus Freeman right now, it's great for now, but you got to keep winning if you want people to continue to like you. And I'm very curious because I think, both Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman have been linked to, not seriously, but like you've heard their names floated around in these NFL conversations. Who do you think is more likely to leave for the NFL, Ryan Day or Marcus Freeman?
Well, I think Marcus Freeman has been very upfront that he does not plan to do so right now. I mean, the reality is, right, like he is at Notre Dame. He's done a great job, of course, in college football. And anytime he's been asked about it, he kind of pointed to the fact that, like, we just signed a long-term contract to stay at Notre Dame. They want to keep him there. And I think he knows that he has the opportunity to accomplish a whole lot at the college level. Now, for Ryan Day, it's an interesting question. Of course, Ohio State, I would make the case, is the best job in all of college football. It is probably one of the few jobs in college football that actually can compete with NFL jobs in terms of prestige. The question for him is going to be, okay, you got over the top. Do you feel like you accomplished something and you're ready to move on now? Do you not want to deal with kind of all of the mess heading forward? I mean, obviously the last couple of years for him and his family, I'm sure, has not been easy. And also it has to be the right opportunity, right? He can be choosy because he has a great team coming back next year. He has Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, and they are absolutely going to be in contention to repeat in 2025. But I do think that he probably will be a little bit more open-minded to NFL calls. He has a strong NFL background, too. He was on Chip Kelly's staff with the 49ers as quarterback coach before he landed at Ohio State. So I think he'll take some calls, but I do ultimately think both these guys will be back in college football.
Joined by Shehan Jayarajuh, talking about Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman and kind of their futures. And you mentioned, Ohio State's got some awesome players coming back, and Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, who you could argue are going to be the two best players in college football, period, next year. But they are losing quite a bit. How different is this Ohio State team going to look next year?
Very different. And especially when you talk about that defensive front, I mean, basically the entire defensive front is leaving. Jack Sawyer kind of established himself as an Ohio legend with his run during the college football playoff, 4.5 sacks and that game-winning touchdown against Texas. And JT Tuimoloau and Tyleik Williams and Cody Simon, all these guys are going to be off to the NFL after this season. So especially on defense, they are starting over in a lot of ways. On offense, it's not quite as dire. They returned 2 or 3 starting offensive linemen. They, of course, have a receiving core with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate that is frankly just on a different level than anybody else. Now, the question for them is going to be, can you continue to develop offensive linemen at that level, and can you find a quarterback? Now, they've got a couple on the rosters that they're pretty excited about. I expect Julian Sain to be that guy. And I think that, similar to what we were talking about with Notre Dame, like he is somebody who I think gives you more as a, sort of a dynamic passer, whereas Will Howard was more of a good decision maker and an accurate midterm passer. So I think they're still going to be in the conversation to compete for a national championship. And again, like I mentioned, I think that the power and level of some of these teams that are competing at the very top, like, I don't think that it's necessarily going to maintain because the transfer portal and NIL have made it just a little bit more complicated.
It has made things way more complex. Joined by Shehan Jayarajuh of CBS Sports. So I'm looking at your article where you're talking about who should be ranked preseason number 1 for next year. And you've got Ohio State at the top of this list, despite them losing a lot on defense. Is this just a faith in their Ohio State and they're just going to reload because that's just what they do?
Yeah, well, I think that when you look at sort of the top teams that I considered, I sort of tiered what I viewed as the top group, and Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Texas were my top 3. Notre Dame, like we talked about, they return a lot, so I think that I view them a little bit differently. But Ohio State and Texas, it is just trust in what they've done over the past couple of years. Of course, for Ohio State, it's going to be having those high-end players, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Caleb Downs. For Texas, it's a little bit of archetype. I think that he is probably the biggest factor that's going to get them consideration for that top spot. But also, Texas was the only team over the last 2 years to make the semifinals of the college football playoff in consecutive years. So a lot of this, yes, is just trust in these coaches and faith in their development process. And of course, the way that they've recruited over the past couple of years. But another indication of this is just frankly, like, there is not an obvious Goliath in 2025 with the amount of players that are turning over. And I think that, this year, I would argue was very wide open in terms of competing for a title. I think that next year might be even more wide open.
I hope you're right. I really do, because it was fun this year looking around and being like, oh, yeah, Ohio State should win it. They're really talented, but they aren't playing great. And then there was Texas, and they were kind of in the same boat. And then Notre Dame, I'm not going to say that they came out of nowhere, but once they lost to Northern Illinois, I think a lot of people wrote them off, and then they obviously come back and play for the title. So with it being wide open, it's great. And I'm sure Ohio State fans are excited about next year. But I have to ask, how do they stack up compared to Michigan for next season?
Well, Michigan, of course, this was a back and forth season for them, but they finished really strong. They lose those defensive tackles, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. They lose Will Johnson to the NFL. But their offense should take a pretty significant step forward. They add, of course, Bryce Underwood as the number 1 recruit in the country at quarterback. He's going to compete with Mikey Keene for that starting quarterback job. I would make the case that while I expect Keene to start the season, I bet that Bryce Underwood is the quarterback by the time that they play against Ohio State in the last week of the season. And the other thing, too, is that, this is obviously a developmental program. They've done such a great job of putting guys in good positions. If they can find some ways to develop some receivers, especially, like, they're going to be much more competitive next year than they were this year. This was always going to be a transition year, not just because of losing most of the coaching staff, but also because of, when you talk about late NFL declarations, when you talk about how late the transition happened with Harbaugh, so you couldn't really use the transfer portal all that much. I expect this to be a more complete team in 2025.
Shehan, I have to ask, could you imagine being a booster at Michigan and you help fork out the millions and millions of dollars that they're paying Bryce Underwood to come play for them? How upset would you be if he was the backup quarterback week 1?
Well, I think that there's an understanding that, look, he is going to play next year. He is going to be a part of it, but you also can't rush the process with these guys. I mean, I think back to some of the number one quarterbacks of the past couple of years, right? Like Arch Manning was willing to wait 2 full years for his chance, and now he's in a great position because he did wait. So this was always a multi-year investment into the program. Now, one thing I want people to understand too, and this was, by the way, true of Arch Manning as well, is like, yeah, landing Bryce Underwood is a big deal and it's a huge step, but more than anything, it's a message to other recruits, to other programs, that Michigan is here and they're ready to spend and they're ready to compete. So I think that while certainly people are going to be pushing for him, I mean, again, as somebody who lives in the state of Texas, I've watched as another former number one quarterback, Ewers, had to deal with all the sort of noise about, like, we want to see the number one guy, and Mikey Keene is going to be at the center of that next year. But I do think that ultimately they're going to bring him along at a manageable level and make sure that the roster is ready so that when he does play, he's able to thrive.
Joined by Shehan Jayarajuh, who covers college football over at CBSSports.com. He's got articles up over there just looking ahead to next season. You should definitely go and check all of those out. So with revenue sharing being a thing now where teams can use that revenue to pay players, I am very intrigued to see what happens with Notre Dame. What do you like? I just don't think that Greg Sankey and Tony Patetti are going to sit back and look at Notre Dame bringing in all this money and not having to share. I just don't think that that's going to sit very well with them. What do you think of the chances that at some point within the next decade, what do you think the chances are that the SEC and the Big Ten kind of force Notre Dame's hand and make them join a conference?
Well, there's 2 pieces of this. One, I mean, Notre Dame understands how much power they have. They consistently reaffirm that being independent is a top priority for them, that they're not interested in joining a conference. They're not interested in changing anything. And look, there are only a handful of programs that I think could get away with it. And it's not just Notre Dame. I think Ohio State could function as an independent program. I think Texas might be able to. But, like, that's pretty much the list. I don't know if there's a lot more. But Notre Dame is that powerful. They are that meaningful to college football. They do have that level of fan base and that amount of money. So, one, I don't think that many entities have the ability to force them to do just about anything. The other piece, too, though, is if you are the Big Ten or SEC and you try to force them into a conference, well, you also run the risk of them joining the other conference, of them joining, if you're the SEC, of them joining the Big Ten, or if you're the Big Ten, of them joining the SEC and being a huge trump card in those conferences. So I think that, look, certainly nobody who's in a conference is thrilled with the fact that Notre Dame gets to exist on their own. And by the way, as somebody who's covered, like, the mechanics of the playoffs, they get their own seats on the College Football Playoff Management Committee. It's the 10 conference commissioners each get a seat, and then the athletic director at Notre Dame. That's how much outsized influence they're allowed to have on the sport. And I just don't think that there's necessarily the power to be able to force them to do any differently.
Yeah, it's something that I'm very intrigued to see what happens with, because you're right. Like, they are, like you said, one of maybe 3 programs that can function as an independent, and they have a ton of power and they know it. It's just, college football's all about money. And I just, that the SEC and the Big Ten have got to be sitting there like, geez, I think Notre Dame made what, $20 million off of that game against Ohio State, and they don't have to share it. Meanwhile, Purdue got paid over $1 million because Ohio State won, which is crazy, but that's the reality of college football. Last question for you, Shehan, and I will let you go. If you had to pick a team next year to be the Indiana or Arizona State team that kind of comes out of nowhere, who would it be?
That's a great question. And, you kind of look down the board. One of the funny things actually is that we had an article where we kind of talked about dark horse teams potentially for the college football playoff. And the issue is, right, with the 12-team playoff, The answer is like half of college football, which is a lot of fun, but it does make it harder to kind of narrow down like this. A couple teams that come to mind for me. So, I will reference my alma mater. I will reference Baylor. I think they've had a really strong finish to the season. They've got a fantastic quarterback in Sawyer Robertson coming back, a great running back, Bryson Washington. I think that they might be the team that jumps up from being in that 8-win range to maybe being more in that 10 to 11-win range with the amount that they bring back. I think that also you look across the SEC. I mean, right now, like, there are so many teams that have the ability to jump up. And I don't know if this counts as a true dark horse because, like, they're a recent champion. But, like, I do think that LSU is poised to take a huge step in 2025. They bring back who I would argue is probably the number one quarterback in college football in Garrett Nussmeier. They stacked his wide receiver room. They brought in some tight ends to make his job just a little bit easier. And they brought in the number one transfer class to really help rebuild that defense as well. So I think that LSU is a team that when you talk about kind of forcing their way from middle class to top of college football, I think they're going to be right there.
Yeah, I can't wait. The interesting thing about Baylor, weren't you worried that they were going to fire their coach at one point this year?
Well, yeah, I think that's one. I think that's an indication of how quick things can change in college football. The other thing too was, because I'll tell you what, as somebody who obviously spends a lot of time and has a lot of connections inside that athletic department, the desire was always to keep Aranda, but he had to deliver enough wins. Frankly, like they had to make the bowl game in order to kind of give him a chance to work long term per se. And when they started 2-4 and with the meat of their schedule ahead of them, it looked really rough. It looked like they were going to be a 4-win team. So when they finished the way that they did, I think that everybody is relieved and thrilled that he was able to come back, frankly, in that athletic department. And, I think that the other piece too, just as a big term trend, is like, I do think that we are going to see just a little bit more patience from athletic departments when it comes to coaches. And one of the biggest reasons for that, I would argue, is because I think that in a world where you're paying players, maybe it doesn't make sense to pay $20 million for a buyout. Maybe trying to improve the players around first is kind of the way that teams are going to go. And I think we saw that to an extent with Billy Napier in Florida. I think we saw that with Venables in Oklahoma. So I think it's going to be really fascinating to see long-term how those kind of situations are handled.
Yeah, I'm very interested. Shehan, thanks for your time, man. As always, you were awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
See ya. That is Shehan Jayarajuh. You can follow him on Twitter at Shehan Jayarajuh, putting a bow there on the college football season. It is Get Over the Hump Wednesday in honor of Mike Woodson and his relentless pursuit to get the Indiana Hoosiers over the hump. They play Northwestern tonight, who Mike Woodson hasn't beaten during his time at Indiana. My thoughts on that game when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in no matter how you're tuning in, whether it's that Indy Sports Ticket app. Maybe you're watching live on Twitter at _ Jonathan Smith if you want to watch there, or maybe you're watching it via YouTube. The best way to watch over at Indy's Sports Ticket. Head over there, subscribe, watch the stream, comment, and join the conversation. It's Wednesday, Mike Woodson's favorite day of the week. It is officially Get Over the Hump Day in honor of the one and only Mike Woodson.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo! Hump day!
Hump day. Mike Woodson's trying to get over the hump tonight against Northwestern.
Listen, Coach, I gotta get us over that hump. I gotta get them comfortable, knowing that you're gonna be in close games and you gotta make plays coming down the home stretch. I mean, in the tournament, we were right there. I just didn't get them over the hump, man. And that's something that I live with every day of my life. Because I truly believe that was the team to really make some noise and get to the finals, and I just couldn't get them over the hump.
Mike Woodson, since his time with the Knicks, couldn't get teams over the hump, and that has been the story of his time here in Bloomington. Just not being able to win these close games and not being able to beat good teams. So every segment that we've done today and every segment that we will continue to do is about getting a player or a team over a hump of some kind. And tonight, Mike Woodson is trying to get his Hoosiers over this Northwestern-sized hump. It's not a big hump. It shouldn't be a big hump. But some humps are larger than others. Like, I wouldn't call this a Mount Everest-sized hump. A Mount Everest-sized hump would be like getting to the Final Four. Okay? Come on now, Mike. You can't be 0-4 against Northwestern. That's what he is so far during his time at Indiana. And it's simply unacceptable. I think part of why people are pulling out on Mike Woodson, part of why his seat has heated up so quickly, even though he's 14-5, even though he's brought in a bunch of talent. Good coaches tend to start 14-5 and bring in a whole bunch of talent. I think part of the holdup with Mike Woodson and why people have a blowtorch underneath his office chair is because he loses to teams like Northwestern and Nebraska. You can't do that at Indiana. I think that if, Mike Woodson was losing to teams like Michigan State, then his seat wouldn't be heating up quite as quickly as it has. When you lose to Nebraska 3 times in a calendar year, your seat's going to heat up quicker. When you start 0-4 against Northwestern, your seat's going to heat up faster. Reputation is so important. And in the minds of Indiana fans, their reputation, their history, greatly outweighs the history of Nebraska and Northwestern. And those are teams that Indiana should own. It doesn't matter that Nebraska employs one of the best coaches in all of college basketball in Fred Hoiberg. Because their name is Nebraska, Indiana fans are 1,000% certain that they should never lose to Nebraska. Yeah, what's funny is Nebraska's football team looks at Indiana the exact same way. And then you've got Northwestern. Doesn't matter that they've had Boo Buie, just a really good guard who's playing for the Knicks now on a 2-way contract, bouncing back and forth. Doesn't matter that they've had better guards. That is a Mike Woodson issue, by the way. Because they're Northwestern, they should never, ever beat Indiana. Reputation is important. And the fact that Northwestern, a team with one of the worst reputations in the Big Ten in terms of basketball, the fact that Mike Woodson hasn't beaten them yet is an issue. And it should be an issue. So Mike Woodson tonight has got to get his Northwestern or his Indiana team over this Northwestern-sized hump for his sake. That needs to change tonight. The games have been close. They've been so close to beating Northwestern, losing by an average of just under 4 points a game in those 4 losses. It's a small hump that Indiana should get over tonight. They're 5.5-point dogs. They're on the road. It's going to be a tough game because winning on the road in any conference is hard. It'll be made easier when Malik Renew comes back. I know he's been practicing, but that's really it. I'd be kind of surprised if he played tonight based off of everything that I read. Bryson Tucker, though, this is a pro Bryson Tucker show. I like the way that he plays basketball, moves well without the ball, seems to fit in nicely. He doesn't get in the way of the offense or anything. He works hard defensively. But come on, man. You got to toughen up. He didn't play against Ohio State because he dislocated his pinky. I played pickup 2 weeks ago on a Saturday. My boy, Matt Murphy, he's got issues with his right pinky. We're playing. He gets his hand in a passing lane. He dislocated his right pinky. And, it's disgusting. It was just, finger just dangling there. It's like, that's nasty. Anyway, he was like, no big deal. He turns around, just rips his pinky back into place. Took like 3 or 4 jumpers, was like, I'm cool. Let's go play. If he can do that, then Bryson Tucker should be able to play through a dislocated right pinky. Jeez. Purdue last night lost to Ohio State, a team that Indiana beat on the road. And look, Purdue fans, I wouldn't freak out. I wouldn't. I said yesterday that Purdue's the best team in the Big Ten. I still feel that way. Micah Parsons just had the night of his life, 8 of 10 from the floor, 6 of 8 from 3. Ohio State as a team shot 11 of 23 from 3. I didn't think that the defense was bad either. Ohio State just hit some tough shots, and Braden Smith went ice cold. Happens sometimes, okay? Purdue, you're still the best team in the Big Ten. I wouldn't freak out after one loss to a team that you probably should have beaten. Trey Kaufman-Renn looked dominant last night, only missed 5 shots. He scored 26. But this is the beauty of basketball. This is why March Madness is the second best event in all of sports behind the Super Bowl, which is like 3 weeks away, which is crazy. Like sometimes you just have nights where you can't buy a bucket and the other team doesn't miss. And that's what happened to Purdue last night. It happens sometimes. Okay. I'm sure that they'll be fine going forward. I have no worries about Purdue basketball at all. They are still, as far as I'm concerned, the best team in the Big Ten. And we're going to find out a bit more about this Indiana team tonight as they go on the road to take on Northwestern. Colts fans, I need you to calm down. You are way too excited about Anthony Richardson working out with this Chris Hess guy who apparently fixed everything that was wrong with Josh Allen. There was one fatal flaw with Anthony Richardson. He's got one big issue, and until it gets fixed, he could work with Jesus Christ himself, and he's not going to get better. I'm going to tell you what that flaw is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unfiltered takes live here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's Get Over the Hump Wednesday here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Indiana looking to get over that Northwestern-sized hump tonight. Mike Woodson, never beaten Northwestern before. It's kind of problematic for the head coach at IU. Anyway, Colts fans, you got to calm down. You do. The Colts propaganda train's rolling. Oh my gosh, did you guys hear Anthony Richardson's going to work out with Chris Hess? Chris Hess is the guy who fixed Josh Allen. Look, Chris Hess might be a miracle worker. Okay, Josh Allen went from completing less than half of his passes in college. Yeah, worse than Anthony Richardson at Wyoming, playing against not SEC level defenses. Anyway, he helped Josh Allen go from a 53% completion percentage his rookie year to 59% his second year to 69%, nice, his third year. That's his career high. From that point, he's been between 63% and 67% in terms of his completion percentage. That's impressive. Chris Hess gets a lot of this credit, right? He's apparently a guru at helping quarterbacks get better at short and intermediate accuracy. Okay, Chris Hess has helped Josh Allen come a long way. And there's hope, don't know why, but there's hope that he can help Anthony Richardson do the exact same thing. And look, I hope he does. I hope Chris Hess helps Anthony Richardson be better at short and intermediate throws. But I have to ask a question that will determine whether or not Chris Hess is actually capable of helping Anthony Richardson develop as a quarterback. Does Chris Hess have any children? If not, does he have experience working in daycare or babysitting? Because Anthony Richardson is a proven child. He is immature, and he has to get over that hump if he wants to get better. We have all of this evidence of the immaturity of Anthony Richardson, the backwards hat to open the season, tapping out, all of the stories that came out of that Colts locker room about him not showing up early, not preparing properly, and him doing the bare minimum. Okay, we have all these stories that point to the immaturity of Anthony Richardson. And I don't care what trainer he works with. He could work with Tom Brady. He could call up Peyton Manning. Okay, he could work with Jesus. He could work with Jesus Christ himself. It does not matter. If you don't know how to work, if you only do the bare minimum, which was an issue for Anthony Richardson this year, you will not get better. You won't. I'm just not convinced that Anthony Richardson knows how to work hard. Did he get a little bit better this year? Sure. But I don't think it was from him working hard. It was just from him gaining experience and getting to play. Like when you do something enough, you're going to eventually get better at it. But when we've seen him over these last 2 years, like he hasn't proven that he's capable of putting in the work on his own. Last offseason, he didn't get any better. Oh, but Jonathan, he was rehabbing his shoulder. Getting better, it's not just a physical thing, especially in a mentally engaging sport like football. If you play quarterback, you have to know and understand defenses. There's a documented story of Anthony Richardson in the middle of the season being told to go in early to meet with the offensive line coach to learn how to set protections and identify blitzes and do all these other things that are important for a quarterback. And sure, he was rehabbing his shoulder in the offseason, so he couldn't throw and work on his accuracy stuff. But he could have sat down on his phone, because you can get film on your phone now, and he could have gone through and worked on identifying blitzes. And he could have texted the offensive line coach and said, hey, how do I do this? Why did he wait until the middle of the season to learn how to do this? Because he's lazy and he does the bare minimum. And that is a sign of immaturity. Okay, he has not proven that he is capable of putting the work in on his own. And in the offseason, it is all on you. If you want to get better in the offseason as an athlete, it is your job. The Indianapolis Colts have 53 players on their roster. This doesn't include practice squad guys. Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are going to spend their offseason, looking at tape for free agency, figuring out who they want to draft, all that kind of stuff. They're not going to have time to hold Anthony Richardson's hand every single day and get him to do the stuff that he should do. Okay, they were able to do that during the regular season because they saw him every single day. And if Anthony Richardson showed up late or didn't show up early, because as the quarterback, if you're on time, you're late. He doesn't have people there to hold his hand every single day like he did during the regular season. And because Ballard and Steichen have a bunch of stuff on their plates, they aren't going to be able to hold him accountable. And they shouldn't have to. He's a grown man. He should be able to hold himself accountable. And he should be disciplined enough to get up and work hard every single day. He is on his own. It is on him. And I just don't think he's mature enough to put the work in. I will never forget the summer after my freshman year of college. I went down to Dallas, played in a wooden bat summer league, had a blast, got in a benches clearing brawl. It was fun. I lifted every day, 6 days a week, and I came back that next fall better than a lot of my teammates because I knew how to work, and it was a me thing. Coach Hooten, the head coach, and Coach Hall, the assistant, they weren't texting me every day like, "Hey, Jonathan, don't forget to get in the cage today. Hey, Jonathan, don't forget to go work out today." Like that. No, that wasn't happening for me, and it shouldn't have to happen for Anthony Richardson. He should be able to go out there and do this on his own. Okay, he has to do it on his own, and Anthony Richardson has to find something this offseason that motivates him. Okay, because the only way you really get better in the offseason when you're on your own to do so is if you are obsessed and if you care deeply. If you don't, you are not going to get better. It's not going to happen. Because even if you go and you work out, you're going to sit there and be like, geez, I don't really want to do this. Okay, you have to be crazy about whatever sport you're playing to get better. I hope that one of Anthony Richardson's role models is Kobe Bryant. And if he is, then his friends need to send him Kobe Bryant motivational videos every day where Kobe Bryant runs over his schedule where he's like, I wake up at 4 a.m. and then I work out at 6 and then I get home at 8 and I eat breakfast and then I go work out again and so on and so forth. He needs to see stuff like that because you have to be obsessed. And I'm just not convinced that Anthony Richardson is. If he was obsessed with football, he wouldn't be rapping on the side. That wouldn't be a thing. He wouldn't be dunking. He wouldn't be going and playing pickup at the Ursay Y like he was when he was a rookie. I'm just not convinced that he's totally obsessed about football. Meanwhile, Puka Nacua, a 5th-round pick out of BYU to the Rams, he's emerged as one of the best receivers in the NFL. My favorite story about Puka Nacua is the Rams have this thing called the Breakfast Club. It's Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. They are at the facility at 5 a.m. They don't tell anybody. People know that it's a thing, but, Puka Nacua, as a rookie, just started showing up. He's like, hey, what's up? And they're like, okay. And they basically sat him in the corner and let him watch whatever, film and their conversations. And over time, as he continued to show up, they slowly included him more and more. And now, Puka Nacua is one of the best receivers in the NFL. You have to be obsessed if you are going to get better, especially in the NFL, because a lot of those guys are obsessed about football, and they're working their tails off in the offseason. See any Derrick Henry workout video if you don't believe me. And I'm just not convinced that Anthony Richardson is fully focused on football, and that's why I don't think his working out with Chris Hess is major news like everyone else thinks that it is. He and Chris Ballard are in the same rowboat. And when the season ended, Anthony Richardson and Chris Ballard were like, hey, we're going to row this boat from Florida to Europe. And if you're smart, you didn't believe them because they haven't backed up anything that they've said for the last 4 years. Okay? I hope that they do. But when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, I am the state of Missouri. Missouri, not misery, because they're, kind of similar. Missouri is known as the show me state. And when it comes to the Colts, when it comes to Anthony Richardson's development, he's going to have to show me, or else I will not believe them. I will not believe them. And, geez, the preseason this next year is going to suck. It's going to be terrible. Anthony Richardson's going to play like 2 drives the entire preseason. You know, he's going to complete like a 3-yard drag route, and it's going to be all over social media. Oh, my gosh, did you guys see that? That happened because he worked out with Chris Hess. Oh, did it? Okay, cool. That's great. That's great. Let's see him do it, 95 more times during the actual season, and maybe I will believe that he's gotten better. Okay, they're going to pull up to training camp, and there's going to be a video of him completing, like a 5-yard slant route against nobody on defense, and it's going to be like right in the numbers. And everyone's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, did you see that?" He completed a 5-yard slant route to Michael Pittman Jr. He wasn't doing that last year. He was, though. He was. Yeah, I got to see it to believe it. So Colts fans, do not get your hopes up. The Real Jonathan Smith Show poll of the day. It's up. Check it out at _ Jonathan Smith. I tweeted it out earlier. It's a very simple question. Do you think Chris Hess will help Anthony Richardson improve enough for the Colts to make the playoffs next year? From where I sit, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Indiana playing against Northwestern tonight. It is Get Over the Hump Wednesday, sponsored by Mike Woodson and his relentless pursuit of getting over the hump. I don't have a definition of what that is, of like when this ends. Maybe we set it for like the Sweet 16 because Indiana hasn't been to a Sweet 16 in forever. Maybe we do that. I don't know. We'll see. The Pacers play tomorrow in Paris. And I got to be honest, it's really upsetting. I hate this with a passion. I have a sports bucket list. And one of those things is like I have to see Victor Wembanyama play in person multiple times in my life. And I was going to go watch him play this year. I was very excited about it. And then, schedule comes out. Nah, man, they're playing 2 games in Paris. Like, why are we robbing Indiana Pacer fans and the people in the great city of Indianapolis of the opportunity to see the best prospect since LeBron James play basketball? Why are we robbing them of this? I get it. Wemby, he's from Paris. Play a game in Paris. Cool. Makes sense. Global expansion. All that kind of stuff. It's great. But why are we taking a Pacers home game away for this? Because they're essentially playing 2 road games. Like that crowd tomorrow and Saturday, because they're playing tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and then on Saturday they're playing at noon. It's going to be all Spurs all the time in that crowd. And, I feel like the Pacers are being robbed of a home game. So very intrigued to see how the Pacers look, how they hold up against a Spurs team that's pretty good this year. Pacers have been rolling here as of late, 8-1 in the month of January. 8-1 in the month of January. Best record in the NBA. It's honestly pretty, fascinating just how much better this Indiana Pacers team has been defensively in the month of January. They are 3rd in the NBA in defensive rating. They are, it's so great. They are just really defending, and it's awesome. Like the level of intensity is up. Part of that is their positional size is a little bit better. Like Mathurin's huge. Andrew Nembhard's like 6'5", Halliburton's 6'6", Siakam's at like 6'8". And then guys who are coming in off the bench can also play defense, and they're also just a little bit bigger. So they're rolling. Can't wait to see them play tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And then on Saturday, they're live again in Paris at noon. Oh, man, what a show today. Mike Woodson, Get Over the Hump Wednesday. It's great. It's a staple. We're going to keep running this back every Wednesday, looking at the Indiana Hoosiers and whether or not they'll finally get over the hump. That's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Hopefully you had a nice time enjoying the show. I greatly appreciate you tuning in. The Dan Dockett Show is coming up next. Rick Venturi joining right off the rip, right at noon. He's going to tell you everything you need to know about the Colts' new defensive coordinator. Can't wait to have Rick on. He's just filled with knowledge and facts. That's coming your way in 5 minutes. Dan Dockich joined by the great Rick Venturi coming up here in 5 minutes.